All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. Great to see everybody. I am just so fired up. Ivan and I spent a couple of hours now last week and this week masterminding and all the amazing things that are coming to the Elite for member benefits and just how do we enhance this. And we're going to be sending out a survey to you guys too. So look out for the email on, what you love about it, what we could improve, if there's things you didn't like or you don't find value in. So look out for that. But why don't we start with some wins? Either from 2023 or heading into 2024. Mr. Gullickson, what's a win for 2023 or heading into the new year?
Yeah, win for 2023 was everything. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, just a fantastic year with my family and with business, and real estate market was phenomenal. Everything about it, just really, really blessed and enjoyed it.
Love it. Love it. Mr. Rubin, how about you, bud? Any good reflections? Any big wins?
The mirroring the same, just family and health for everybody. Going into this year, a lot to do. But signed a deal this morning for deal in Connecticut with Tyler Smith. So excited about that on a 24 unit property. So first of many this year. So excited.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. It's funny you mentioned health because we're kicking off the new year, as you guys probably saw with the health expert. We're going to get into that in a minute. Len, what about you, bud? What's a good win? And then we'll get into the mastermind principles.
I think a win for me is year-end focus. I don't know if we ever need a new year to take that time to focus, but it is a good way to remind us to check out what we've done and check out where we want to go. So yeah, that's my gig, focus.
I love it. And actually, I'm going to put this in the chat. You guys are all invited this Thursday, if you'd like. We're going to take a deep dive into, it's called the Matrix Resolution. It's going to be a 2-hour event where we really dissect thinking and the results, but in a different way, applying it. It'll be a working masterclass. It'll be very, very much back and forth. So I'll put that in the chat here. If you want to attend, you don't have to pay for it. It's free for the elite, as all the events are. So that's this Thursday from 6 to 8. And Nelson, would you mind reading the mastermind principles, brother, if I pull them up?
No problem. Be happy to.
Your angelic voice.
Yep. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this blessed day and for allowing us to come together in a spirit of harmony to mastermind for the benefit of all of our mastermind members, our families, and for the good of mankind. We ask that you bless this mastermind group today and every day forward. We release ourselves to the mastermind because we are strong when we have others to help us. We believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond our own. We understand that we will more easily create positive results in our lives when we are open to looking at ourselves, our challenges, and our opportunities from another's point of view. We decide to release our desire totally in trust to the mastermind, and we are open to accepting new possibilities. We forgive ourselves for mistakes we have made. We also forgive others who have wronged us in the past so we can move forward into the future with a clean slate. We ask God and our mastermind family to hear what we really want, our goals, our dreams, and our desires, and we hear our mastermind partners supporting us in our fulfillment. We know, relax, and accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to our every need. We are grateful knowing this is so. We now have a covenant in which it is agreed that the mastermind shall supply us with an abundance of all things necessary to live a success-filled and happy life. We dedicate ourselves to be of maximum service to the world and our fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the highest example for others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will. We go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, brother. A couple of the housekeeping things as we move into the new year. Again, Ivan and I and the team have been masterminding on what the elite looks like and how it works. We're going to be bumping out the live event to June, the end of June. We'll get some firm dates on that. And biggest reason is we're just looking to build the membership. Build it up, build the quality, and have a world-class event that includes a lot of fun and adventure. So stay tuned for that. It should be really exciting. But we don't want to just be sitting in a classroom, looking at a bunch of information. It's going to be more interactive and just working with Ivan on that, Ivan and the team. The next thing is we'd like to bump the meeting time from 12 to 1. Does anybody here have an immediate conflict with that on Tuesdays? And the reason, it's my brother from another mother, Ivan's over in London. He's in a different time zone. He's going to be there for the foreseeable future. And I really want to have his energy and the Capitan's family office energy in this meeting. So if you guys are all cool with it, we're just going to bump it from 12 o'clock to 1, if that's okay. The other thing, as we expand across the country, is the time zone. It allows for more people to kind of be right around lunch as we go, all the way to the PST time zone. So if everybody is okay with that, I didn't think that was a big change, so it looks good. I think that's it. So as we were masterminding about the quality of what we're doing in the elite, we're getting back to more from spirit, intellect, and body, right? So today's going to be about body. What a better way to kick off the new year than really understanding nutrition at a very, very high level. And I've seen and heard a lot of nutrition coaches, nutrition experts, but I've never seen anybody know as much as this man here, Nick Howarth, who was introduced to us by Ivan and Capitan's family office, as somebody that is a trusted advisor for their group. And we thought it'd be really, really good to bring him in and just give some value on nutrition and understanding food at a very high level. Like I said, I've never heard anybody know so much about what we put into our body and why, and how to do some very simple things to maybe tweak your diets and tweak your eating habits. I took just a couple of things he said when I saw him speak at Ivan's and implemented them. And that's why I told you guys I released like 10 pounds since Thanksgiving. It was crazy. Just a couple of small things. So Nick, do you need screen share, brother? You're muted. Let me unmute you here. Let's see. And the biggest thing, guys, is write down questions. We're going to do a Q&A at the end. Answer your questions on some things you may be doing, just some quick tips and quick fixes. And we're recording this for the future use too, so don't worry too much if you miss something. But Nick, I'm going to give you the floor, brother. And if you want to just kind of give these guys your background, and then we can get into it.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, my name's Nick Howarth, as Brian mentioned. I'm from South Africa. I'm actually British born, grew up in South Africa. And I was a professional sportsman as a young man. I was a track athlete, held national and world records when I was a young man. When I got into my mid-30s and early 40s, I found that I was still keeping myself in shape, but I found that I was putting on the weight. I realized I didn't have a clue about nutrition. I thought I did. I was following a guy called Professor Tim Noakes. He was kind of my opinion leader on sports nutrition. And he had a book, which is actually a world-renowned book called The Law of Running. And he's got a whole section in there about nutrition. And so I followed this guy for my entire athletics career and after that as well. And then this guy himself actually ended up developing diabetes type 2. And I was like, okay, so that's a question mark, so what does this guy really know about nutrition? And he did a 180-degree turn on what he'd been preaching about carbohydrates and high sugar and high carbohydrates for athletes. So my ears pricked up because that's exactly what I was doing. And I found a book that was written in 1852 called A Letter on Corpulence. Now, the name, simple English, that just means a dissertation or a letter on obesity. And I was carrying about, in South Africa, we measure in kilograms, but in pounds, it's about 35 pounds more than I was when I left high school. And I was like, this shouldn't be. I don't understand why you put on weight as you get older. It seems to be an acceptable norm where it didn't ring true with me. So I read this book called A Letter on Corpulence, and it was a guy who'd in 1852 he wrote this book. It's said to be the first book on diet ever written, and it made sense, and it was very simple and very easy to follow. So I started following the principles in this book. And I lost all the weight. I got, within 3 months, I got back down to the weight that I was when I left high school. And that was 11 years ago, and I still haven't put that weight back on. I've developed it since then. So basically what we realized as we started going along and handling initially endurance type athletes like cyclists and Ironman and endurance runners and swimmers and so on, we then got family members also wanting to get on board. They were like, we're not sportsmen, but we also want to lose weight and get healthy. And we started looking at it from the point of view of this is more of a health thing rather than a weight loss thing, because we realized that the healthier the guys got, the easier they lost the weight. If you're trying to lose weight by exercising or by cutting your calories, there's something wrong with the diet. It doesn't work that way around. It actually, when your body starts using food efficiently and effectively, that's when you start losing weight. So we realized that, and we're like, okay, so how do we get into helping people with this? And we looked into the hormone imbalance type of thing that we'd heard about out there, and we started really looking into this. And we started looking at our clients and what kind of symptoms they were showing, and it became very apparent that when you have different kind of hormonal issues, whether you're male or female, and more precisely glandular issues, so endocrine issues, endocrine system disruptors that have taken hold of the different glands in the body starts to take on a different kind of shape. So for instance, and you'll all when I mention these different kinds of shapes, you'll all go, yeah, I know someone like that, and that rings true with me, So like for instance, the example that I always use is, because we all know someone like this, is a woman who starts accumulating her fat around her butt and her hips and her thighs, and she gets a little tummy under her belly button. Now that is a classic example of something that's going wrong with the ovaries. So you'll also find that you'll have a whole host of other symptoms besides accumulating weight around that area. So she'll have a disproportionately large lower body and a smaller upper body, like they usually have small boobs and a small torso. But then they get this butt, and I'm sure you can think of someone like that, and it is purely because of this hormonal imbalance, usually to with estrogen and progesterone, different imbalances. They generally have trouble with their menstrual cycle, and possibly even fertility or holding a pregnancy, and all these kinds of things. And what we found with this was it was directly related to a high sugar and a high carbohydrate diet. So if you're on a high sugar and high carbohydrate diet, it wreaks havoc on the ovaries. So then we were like, okay, so what about a guy who's got, a spare tire around his waist? You get these guys got these skinny little legs, and he's got these love handles, and he's got what you call a pendulous belly, a belly that hangs over his belt. It's not a hard, like kind of watermelon type belly. It's a soft, flabby belly that hangs over his belt. He's got these passion handles, and his butt's small, and his legs are small. So that is a classic example of adrenal problems. So the guy's either got a highly stressful job, or he's taken some kind of shock in his life that he's never recovered from, or she has never recovered from, and the adrenal glands start to go into overdrive, and they kind of freewheel. So they produce a hormone called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And although the body needs cortisol to regulate things like blood pressure and so on, and inflammation, too much of it becomes inflammatory, and it actually starts to put stress back on the adrenal glands that are creating this hormone to create more cortisol. So that's why I say it creates this freewheeling effect. And these guys, you'll find they wake up suddenly at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning. That's a classic example of someone who's having a cortisol dump from the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands go bang, and they push cortisol into the system. So we're like, okay, and there's a whole host of other issues, like you'd find low sodium type issues coming up, cramps in the calf muscles at night. I think in America they call it Charlie horses. You'll find that the eyelids start to flicker, and these are all low sodium issues, and that's what cortisol also does, is it strips the body of sodium. And now you also find that what they also do is it takes protein and it converts it into glucose. So that's why you find that these guys have a small butt and small legs, thin legs, because the cortisol goes for the biggest muscles in the body, the most protein, and it starts robbing it, turns it into glucose, and starts packing it around the adrenal glands, which sit above your kidneys in your back. So you start developing love handles, and you start developing this belly around the front. And there's various kinds of endocrine disorders or disruptions, thyroid, and even the liver. The liver is an organ. It's not a gland, but it is kind of part of the endocrine system because it converts hormones. It takes thyroid hormones, for instance, and it converts them from being an inactive hormone into an active hormone. And when the liver becomes disrupted, it doesn't do that efficiently anymore. And the thyroid doesn't have a hormone that it can use, an active hormone that it can use to regulate metabolism, because that's mainly what the thyroid does. It does other things too. And the metabolism slows down, and the person starts to put weight on all over the body. So you'll see that you always get these old ladies, they call it bingo wings, where they have this piece of flabby skin on the back of their arm. That's a sign of a slow thyroid. You get a double chin, and they accumulate fat all over the body. And in fact, it's not even really fat. It's a mixture of fat and water that becomes like a sludge, and it lodges itself between the cells, and it sticks there. And these guys lose weight very slowly, but they put on weight very, very fast because their metabolism is very slow. So we have different endocrine disorders, and these are all, it all basically boils down to a bad diet. Because if you, the crux of the matter is that these glands are fatty globules that produce hormones. And when they're working perfectly, they produce exactly the correct amount of hormone for whatever function it's trying to carry out in the body. So for instance, there's a little gland in the brain next to the pituitary gland that when a woman or a girl reaches puberty, it sends a hormone off down to the ovaries, touches on the ovaries release its first egg, and the girl has her first menstrual cycle. And it works perfectly, and the menstrual cycle is eventless. But when you are living life and you start accumulating toxins in the body from food, from the air, from your water, from the environment, like even radiation that comes out of concrete, and all of these kinds of things start to disrupt the endocrine system. And these glands, being fatty globules, are magnets for toxins. So these toxins accumulate in these glands, and they become disrupted, which means they're not communicating properly. They start to either communicate too much, in other words, too much of a hormone, or too little of a hormone, or no hormone that it produces. So this is how hormone imbalances are created in the body. So then we back up a little bit now, and we go into another hormone called insulin. And you've heard of insulin, you've heard of diabetes and the different kinds of diabetes. But what isn't explained to people carefully is how their diet is making them insulin resistant, and what that actually means for the person's health and the person's weight gain or weight loss. So when you eat anything, the pancreas kind of senses that you put some food in the body, and the liver is going to convert a certain amount of that food into glucose. Now, the liver has insulin has two major functions. It takes excess glucose and it removes it from the blood. If it didn't do that, your body would become too acidic, and you would eventually go into a state of what they call ketoacidosis, which is how they find out that someone has become diabetic type 1, which is said to be hereditary, but they really don't know what causes diabetes type 1. It's just like the beta cells in the pancreas, they just shut down and they stop creating insulin. And then the glucose levels in the blood just continue to rise and rise and rise. And the body becomes very acidic, and a person could die from that. And you could have kidney failure and all these types of things if you don't catch it early enough. So it has to remove that excess glucose from the blood so that this ketoacidosis doesn't happen in the body. So it's a very good hormone to have. Otherwise, it's not kind of necessary. So now So now if we look at it, then if you're eating food that continues to push your glucose levels up, like sugar, carbohydrates, and foods like that, the insulin levels have to be produced at the level enough to remove that excess glucose from the blood. So now you have high insulin levels, and it's even when you don't eat high sugar or high carbohydrates, when you eat anything, your glucose goes up. So that includes snacking now. So someone who eats frequently throughout the day and considers himself a healthy-ish eater, but he eats 6-7 meals a day, which includes his snacks, he could even develop diabetes or insulin resistance because his insulin levels just continue to rise while they're trying to handle the glucose that the pancreas is, that the liver is creating. So now you have a look at what insulin does other than remove glucose in the body. It is a key that opens up the cell to allow nutrients into the cell. So it's just like literally that. That's as simple as it is. It's a key that opens the cell up. The cell opens, the nutrients go into the cell. It fires with oxygen like a combustion engine, and it spits out a fatty acid out of an exhaust, and you actually breathe that out of your mouth. So when you're losing weight, this is just an interesting little tidbit. So when you're losing weight, you actually don't lose it in the bathroom. You lose it in your sleep through your mouth. You breathe it out through your lungs. So you actually lose fat through your mouth. Okay, so back to the insulin. So now, when insulin levels are too high, these little organisms, these cells have a survival potential, an individual survival potential of their own, and they decide, hang on one second, this insulin is way too high, and it's causing inflammation, and it's a contra-survival thing to me. I'm going to shut down to this insulin until the levels drop a little bit. So the cells shut down, and they don't allow insulin to open the cell, which means the nutrients are not getting in, which means the person is constantly hungry, which means he snacks all day, which means his insulin levels go up and up and up, which means he eventually becomes obese or diabetic. So that's the deal with how somebody gets insulin resistant, how they become obese, how they put on weight. If you're putting on weight, you're insulin resistant to some or other degree. That's just the way it is. So now, how do you keep it down? Like, how do you get this level of insulin to be acceptable so that your cells open up and accept these nutrients back in so that you can live life in a healthy way? Because you can extrapolate from the little statement that your cells are not accepting nutrients anymore. So now you can think about the domino effect that will create as far as health issues go. So it creates all sorts of things. It creates autoimmune type issues. It creates prostate issues. It creates brain fog. Like I said before, it wreaks havoc on the ovaries. It wreaks havoc on the liver. It's just, it's obviously not getting the nutrients that it's supposed to get. So that the immune system starts breaking down, the body starts breaking down, the person starts craving certain kinds of food at this point. That the body starts craving an easy fuel source, which is sugar and carbohydrates. So they start shoveling pizzas in and burgers and French fries and sugar and chocolate cake, and it just perpetuates this problem and makes it worse. So then what really needs to happen is you need to somehow be able to bring these insulin levels down stably in an acceptable range, so that the insulin levels stay in an acceptable, stable range. When you do that, the cells then open up again and they start accepting nutrients. But the only way that you can do that is by having a densely nutritious diet, cutting out sugar, cutting out processed carbohydrates, reading your labels on all the food that you eat, because I can tell you, the United States is not the only place in the world that has terrible food, but it does. The UK is the same. Europe is, some places is even worse. I live in South Africa, and I have to hunt to find good food. Obviously, the longer you do it, the more places you find that have the healthy food. But the thing is this, is that you got to make sure that you're not putting this stuff into your body. It isn't just a fad where it's like, GMO food is bad for you. Yeah, I heard that. It's just a conspiracy theory. We need food. That's not the case. GMO food wreaks absolute havoc on the body. It wreaks havoc on the liver. You get a fatty liver from that. And the problem with GMO foods is that they fertilize these foods with something called glyphosate, and it mimics estrogen in the body. So now these guys are wondering why they're getting moobs, these man boobs. They're wondering why they have erectile dysfunction. They don't know why all these things are happening to them. I'm just getting older now, and that's not what it is. It's literally what you're eating. You can keep your body youthful if you knew exactly what to eat. For instance, just a simple thing like tap water. So if you're drinking tap water, you're not drinking, and this counts filtered tap water in as well. So you're drinking tap water, you've got a beautiful filter on your tap, and it works great, and you think you're drinking healthy water. The problem with tap water is, and there are some places in the world that have got it right, but most haven't. So what it does is, you go to the bathroom, you do your business, it goes off to a sewage recycling plant. It recycles it, so it makes it back into tap water, and it comes out through your tap, and it's clean. It doesn't have the viruses because they've killed that with copious amounts of chemicals like chlorine and other types of chemicals, which are actually not good for you in themselves. So it comes back to you free of viruses and free of bacteria, but it comes back to you with hormones in, because they can't remove the hormones from tap water. So when you're excreting in the bathroom, these hormones are going in the water, and the hormone content in the tap water starts to build bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and especially with estrogen. So now just drinking tap water can make you fat. So, where do you go from here? And it really is finding yourself a reliable source of mineral water or spring water that is natural water. It hasn't been filtered. It hasn't been processed. They haven't added fluoride to the water. They haven't added all these different chemicals that they do to tap water. So don't go for bottled, purified water. That won't help. All right. And then the other thing that I also wanted to bring up was there are various kinds of foods that people think are healthy, but when you really break it down as to the health benefits versus the harm it does, they are not healthy. Things like fruit. So fruit do have a lot of nutrients in them. They have minerals, they have vitamins, like nice, good, healthy vitamins, and vitamins with all their compounds, not the synthetic stuff that you buy in your health store. But they have fructose. And fructose is the worst sugar that you can put into your body. And that could be argued by other people, but the fact stands that the fructose cannot be broken down in the body. So what the liver does with fructose is it turns it into liver fat. So the person starts to develop a non-alcoholic fatty liver. His gallbladder starts to give in, and that creates a whole nother domino effect of digestive issues such as SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, leaky bowel syndrome, all of these kinds of things comes from fructose, amongst other things. Like, for instance, if you're a smoker, you're probably at some point going to get a leaky bowel. Also, SIBO can happen. But the deal with it is it all starts at the top of the digestive tract. So you've got your liver, which is producing bile, and bile is like a dishwashing liquid. So it takes, blueberries are good. The good question. So blueberries, they are very low in fructose, and the health content in them far outweighs the very low fructose content in them. So blueberries are probably one of the only ones that you can eat. Berries are generally lower in fructose. So anyway, back to the what I was saying there, whatever that was. So basically, your liver creates bile, and bile breaks down fat. So it takes the fat that you're eating, whether it's vitamin E or omega-3s or whatever type of fatty nutrient that you're putting into your body, including animal fat or avocados or whatever it might be, and it breaks those fats down into a smaller particle that can be absorbed into the intestinal walls and go into the system. So that's what bile does. The problem that starts to happen is that when you're eating a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet, the gallbladder, which concentrates the bile so that it's strong enough to break the fat down, doesn't work enough, because when you eat fat or heavy protein, the gallbladder gets a yeah, I'll get to the toddler thing. We definitely have yeah, the fruit with toddlers, not good. A moderate amount of fruit for toddlers, and it should be fruit like a little bit of oranges, a little bit of, not the real sugary stuff. A banana would be okay, like a little bit of a banana, but not too much fruit. Don't give them copious amounts of fruit. Fruit's not good for them. All right, but they do need it because their systems work differently to ours. There was a question here about children, by the way. So their systems work differently to ours. They can process carbohydrates and sugar a lot better than we can. But if you give them too much of it, they're going to stop doing that. So you've got to be careful how much fructose you give them in their fruit. All right, so back to the gallbladder. This is actually very important when it comes to digestion. So now you're eating carbohydrates and sugar. The gallbladder doesn't need to work because there's no fat involved. So the concentrated bile becomes a sticky sludge, and it even can become a stone. And this bile is also made from cholesterol. So you need cholesterol. So the whole cholesterol thing is really just a scam. There's a whole lot more to the whole cholesterol thing. So be careful about cholesterol testing. I can give you information on how to get tested on cholesterol and the right testing for cholesterol, because they never do that. They want to just put you on the medication. So anyway, when you eat fat and protein, pancreas senses this, and it sends off a hormone that touches on the gallbladder, and the gallbladder squeezes, and it squeezes out this concentrated bile, which goes into the small intestine, and it breaks down the fat that you've been eating so that it can be digested properly and absorbed properly. But when the gallbladder starts becoming sludgy and even stones in it, it blocks this thing called the common bile duct that comes out of the gallbladder into the small intestine, and the bile doesn't go in there, and all sorts of things start to happen then. So you're not absorbing your vitamin D and your vitamin K, which runs your immune system. So your immune system starts to drop. You're not getting your vitamin E, and so your oxygen content in your blood starts to drop. And then you can imagine just those two things, what the domino effect of health issues could be because of those two things. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you are eating things that are going to keep your bile loose in your gallbladder. So beet tops is one of them, but you got to eat a whole lot of beet tops to get the bile unsludged in your gallbladder. And it's one of the major reasons, especially in the US, for indigestion and for all sorts of digestive type of issues, is the gallbladder. And unfortunately, the solution that is given is remove the gallbladder, which now means that bile would just be dripping constantly at a 24/7 rate into the small intestine, and not at a concentrated level like it should be, which is what the gallbladder is there for. So you find that someone who's had a gallbladder issue, their stool is a certain color. You find that their stool will float, which means there's too much fat in the stool. And there's various issues that start to crop up when someone has had their gallbladder removed. So the gallbladder isn't just something that you can go, oh, well, it looks like it's sludgy, let's just cut it out. It's not really needed anyway. It is absolutely needed and crucial to health, because when the gallbladder is not healthy, the rest of the intestinal tract is not healthy, and the digestive tract is not healthy. And that's just the start of a nightmare for anybody who's experiencing like digestive issues and that kind of thing. Now, you can pull most of this stuff back if you're eating the right food. There are certain kinds of foods that you should be eating if you have digestive issues, and I'm assuming a lot of you do have, because it's very, very common. There's certain things that you shouldn't be eating. There are certain foods, natural foods, that not even medications, we don't deal in, I'm not a doctor, I'm self-taught. There are definite natural foods that make more of a difference on the body than medication does, than pharmaceuticals do. Like, for instance, if you had a stomach ulcer, if you just drank cabbage juice 3 times a day for 3 days, you'd probably be able to handle your stomach ulcer. You know, when you're on a healthy diet, and now the cells are opening up again, and they're accepting these densely nutritious foods that are going in there, and the cells are rebuilding on this, like, this real sturdy building block, all sorts of health issues start to just dissipate. And it's like, wow, you know, I don't know, but I used to have this, like, whatever, a swollen lymph node under my arm since I had my 3rd child, for instance, and that's gone away. We've had that happen on our program. We've steered people away from heart surgery, you know, diabetes type 2, which is where your insulin, where your cells are not receiving insulin anymore, where they're insulin resistant to the nth degree. That's reversible very easily. High blood pressure is really just a deficiency in certain minerals. It's got nothing to do with high salt content. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It's got to do with a bad diet and not enough of certain minerals. You know, so there are so many things that get handled on a healthy program that, you know, that is specifically made for you, but is also structured on the fundamentals of healthy eating. You know, so again, you need to know what healthy eating is. Fruit, not healthy. Things like potatoes, things that grow under the ground are roots, so they are high in carbohydrates. They're not all bad, but some are quite bad. Like for instance, potatoes are part of the nightshade family. What that means is that it has a natural pesticide in it called lectins, and lectins are a pesticide, so they poison. And you find these lectins in other nightshade vegetables as well, such as chilies and tomatoes. However, when these other vegetables that have lectins in become ripe, like a tomato or a chili or a jalapeno, the lectin content reduces considerably. So they're edible. You just don't have too much of it, but it becomes edible. But potatoes, just stay away from them. They're firstly too high in sugar and carbohydrates, and too low in fiber, and much too high in lectins. Then you can cross over to something like nuts. So, you know, like, I'm a healthy eater, you know, I'm eating almonds. So you really need to know what almonds are doing to you, and what you can do to make almonds healthy, because they do have a lot of goodness. They just have too much badness in them, which you can remove if you knew what to do with them. For instance, have you ever thought about how seeds like grains and nuts and seeds, which are basically, that covers everything, grains to nuts, they're all seeds, like how they disseminate themselves? It's usually through being consumed by some kind of animal, whether it's a bird or some kind of a land animal that eats it and then walks over to the next field and poops it out, or flies over to the next field, and then, you know, you have a nut tree grow there, or a maize stalk or something like that. And why didn't that seed get digested in the stomach of the animal? And the reason for that is that it contains phytoacid. So phytoacid is what you find in the brown skin of the almond. So a phytoacid is a preservative. So it's a natural preservative which stops that seed from being digested. When you're eating those kinds of seeds, especially grain, like, cut out the grain, man. The grain is really not doing you any good. It messes up your digestive system, even if it's gluten-free. It doesn't get digested, firstly. Secondly, it lines your intestinal walls with a preservative, which means the other food that you're eating now is also not being absorbed or digested properly. So there was a question that came up there, which I didn't actually quite catch. So maybe I'll just answer it a bit later. So anyway, so these are the kinds of things that you've got to look out for, that you've got to know. And it does sound like it's complicated, but it's actually not. It's actually very, very simple. It's like anything. Once you have the knowledge on something, you can then take responsibility for it and then get control over it. Whatever subject that might be, when you have knowledge, you have responsibility, you have control. So it's the same with how your body works and what foods are doing, and you know how to read a label in a store. Like for instance, you go to the store and you see no added sugar on a label. You go, oh, lovely, no added sugar. And you take it home and you eat it and you put on a pound. You're like, what the hell? I'm eating no added sugar food. But it's a no added sugar. It has sugar in it. It just has no added sugar. So you've got to have a look at your label and go, if it has 1 gram of sugar, that's 1/4 teaspoon. That's a lot of sugar. That's way too much sugar. So so basically, when you're buying anything, if it says sugar on it, put it back on the shelf. If it says 0 sugar, great. The other thing that you've got to look out for is 0 sugar, like Coke Zero. So you go and have a look at 0 sugar, and how they sweeten it is they say we're using stevia leaf extract, which is not a bad sweetener. It's a sugar alcohol which can mess with your digestion, but it's not a bad sweetener. But the problem also is that they put things like maltodextrin in there. Maltodextrin is not classified as a sugar. It's actually classified as a herbicide. So it kills plants, you know, so which means it kills organisms. This is what maltodextrin is. But it's also very sweet. And it is also, it spikes your glycemic index, so it spikes your insulin higher than sugar does. But it's not classified as a sugar. So on these products, they are saying sugar-free. So you're going, wow, sugar-free, fantastic. And you're eating all this maltodextrin and you're just putting on weight and you don't know why. So these are just like little tidbits that you've got to think with when you're going to the store and buying your, buying your food. I prefer to the shortest distance from the actual ground to my table is the healthiest. So I don't want it going through, you know, a whole chain of, you know, processing and production and packaging and the rest of it, because a lot can be lost and a lot can be put in there and a lot can be hidden. So there's lots of hidden things in these ingredients on your sorry, let me just take this message quickly. So there's a lot of different, just hold on 1 second, sorry. So you've got to have a look at all these issues with these ingredients. You have to look at the ingredients, you have to look at other ingredients, and you have to look at nutritional facts. So they all may differ. It may say 0 sugar, but then it says there's sugar in the nutritional facts. It may say sugar-free, but it says sucrose on the ingredients, which is sugar. And on the ingredients, they'll list the ingredient that is in the highest content on the in the product. So if it says, you know, pineapple extract, is the first ingredient, that would be the highest volume of ingredients in that food. Okay, cool. We're going to move to a Q&A now. Sorry, I see there are lots of questions coming up, and I hope you've learned something so far.
Absolutely, Nick. I'll just go through some of the ones in the chat. So this is the one thing that people want to know, right? Is do you have some simple and actionable recommendations, generally speaking? Avoid this, do this, some quick modifications that people can do, that are just general kind of guidelines.
So what I would do, first of all, if I was trying to get healthy, cut out sugar. Don't even compromise with that. Don't even question that. Cut out sugar. Cut out grain. All grain. That includes rice. That includes oats. That is everything. Cut out grain. You know that a slice of white bread will spike your insulin higher than sugar will, gram for gram. So, and if you're eating whole wheat, so you're eating whole grain, that just means it has more of the bad stuff in it and they haven't actually removed that. So it's got all the phyto acids in it. It's like, wow, I'm healthy. I'm eating this whole grain bread, it's not healthy, so don't be fooled by the marketing out there. So those are the two things I would do. Obviously things like fizzy drinks and, and those kinds of things, are definitely a no-no. But sugar, grain, cut those things out. You will find a improvement in your health. The other thing you've got to do is eat a lot of leafy green vegetables. They call it cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables are things like kale, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, all of those above the ground leafy green type vegetables. They call them cruciferous. It comes from the word cross, which means their leaves do this. They make a cross on the top. If you look at the plant from the top, it's got a bit of a cross on it. So yeah, those are the things that I would do. And also cut down on the protein intake. That it's not true that you need a lot of protein. You need about 4 to 6 ounces of protein in a meal. Your body, your liver cannot process more than that. It can only process about that per meal. That turns it into amino acids and it builds muscle. If you have more than that per meal, I know we all want to. We all want to have a big, fillet like that big. I know that. But that's going to turn to glucose. So you can actually become diabetic from eating too much protein, and it messes with your liver as well.
Let's see. Eric Marcaron, does eating healthy mean that everything needs to be organic or natural, or is it possible to get stuff in the market?
Ideally, organic. Ideally. So you're looking for grass-fed, pasture-raised, hormone-free. The other thing that I just wanted to mention as well, Brian, is dairy as well. Try and stay away from dairy as far as you can, because dairy has lactose in. Anything that ends with O's means sugar. So it's dairy sugar. So things like, you can eat butter because that's the fatty part of dairy. Heavy cream, that's the fatty part of the dairy. But and also like double thick Greek yogurt is okay. But that kind of thing will slow down weight loss. If you're eating dairy, it'll slow down weight loss. And it'll also mess with estrogen levels, because remember, even if it is organic and hormone free, it has animal hormones in it. The animal has its own hormones, so you've got to think with that as well. So, if you're going to if you like your dairy, you'd rather go goat's dairy or sheep dairy.
Very cool. There's another question. Ira, we're going to put together a package with Nick for you guys if you want to work with his team or one-on-one. So we'll get back to you with that. Let's see. Oh, this is a really good one from Eric. Can you let us know the 2 or 3 meals that you're going to eat today, the time? What about intermittent fasting too? We didn't really talk about that. And then the makeup of the meals that you're eating today.
All right. So for instance, here it's now, okay, so it's 10 to 8. It's 7:50 p.m. here. So I've just had dinner. I had fatty ground beef, and I had a kale shake, and I had cauliflower mash. So it's like mashed potatoes, but it's made from cauliflower. So that was my dinner. For lunch, I had a ground beef patty, which we made ourselves, and roasted vegetables, which were onions, marrow, baby marrow, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. So those are I don't eat breakfast. I never eat breakfast. I either eat 1 or 2 meals a day. And just on that subject, I'm also an avid cyclist. I ride a bike, and I ride a lot. I do in miles. I probably do something like 300 miles a week on a bicycle, and I eat very little. So it's a good indicator of how efficient the body becomes with using fuel when you're eating right. I can ride and ride and ride and ride. I don't eat breakfast. I go and ride 100 miles on my bike. So just keep that in mind, that it's not a low calorie diet, because low calorie diets make you tired and they make you sick. And this is using fuel efficiently, using your food efficiently.
Let's see what else we got here. So what, because breakfast is a big misconception, isn't it?
Well, it's breakfast. Break fast. You're supposed to be fasting,
Yeah. So one of the things that really I think helped me the most was at least so Monday through Friday, but you know, not really eating before noon, like noon to 5 was my eating hours.
Totally. That works.
So that's something, and it takes a little bit to get used to that, guys. But once you do and you figure it out, it's so I drink a lot more water because that'll fill you up, you know. It'll kind of take that edge off. But
You got to make sure that you also have your electrolytes when you're drinking water. You got to make sure you're having your salt and your potassium, and you have your potassium at 2 times the amount of your salt. You're supposed to actually have 4,700 milligrams of potassium per day and 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. So you'll get a lot of that
before the pink sea salt. Is that what that is?
Yeah, you can use the pink sea salt, or you can use the Celtic salt. It's also good. You get a lot of potassium from your green leafy vegetables. So if you're eating like 4 or 5 cups of green leafy vegetables per day, you'll get about 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of potassium from that, depending on where it's grown and what the soil's like. And that's a whole nother subject.
Sure.
So you'll need to take a potassium supplement. You should be taking about 2,000 milligrams per day supplementing of a supplement of potassium. And usually potassium citrate is best because it breaks down calcium deposits in the body.
Bananas have potassium too, yeah? Or am I wrong?
They do, but they got fructose in.
Sugar, too much sugar, yeah, gotcha.
Too much sugar. Way too much sugar, yeah.
We are using a Berkey filter for tap water. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know that filter, but I do know the only filter that I know that's and I don't know this one, so I can't comment on it, but I do know that the Kangen water filter is a good filter. That'll handle the hormones. It kills everything. But you should be adding your electrolytes to water. You cannot drink water without your electrolytes in. You can't just drink, purified water with no electrolytes in. You have to have that electrolytes. Otherwise, the water you're drinking will wash your remaining electrolytes out of your body.
Interesting. So it's just adding salt and potassium. What about like flavoring? Because if I just put salt in water, it tastes like the ocean, right?
No, it doesn't actually.
No?
What you should do is you should test it. So you take 1/4 of a teaspoon, put it with, I don't know if you know what a liter is. I'm trying to think about what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So you put a 1/4 of a teaspoon in, see what it tastes like, and get it to a point where the water is sweet. It actually makes the water sweet. If it becomes salty, it's too much.
Too much, okay.
If it's sweet, yeah. So it actually becomes quite palatable.
I am drinking my sweet water, Nick, now.
There you go, Ivan.
What about putting lemons in water? Good or bad?
Yeah, that can also work. So anything like lemons or apple cider vinegar, lemons are fine because they're very low in fructose. They're very high in citric acid. They help with acidity in the stomach. They help with digestion. Lemons are good, but apple cider vinegar, so what you should do is before you eat, you should take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, preferably with the mother. So you get apple cider vinegar with the mother. That's the best version of it. Organic. Tablespoon of that. Tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice, not bottled lemon juice. Bottled lemon juice is highly processed with heat, and it's literally just sugar. So don't buy the bottled stuff, and don't get fooled by organic lemon juice in a bottle. Don't buy bottled lemon juice. Buy lemons and squeeze them. And then a tablespoon of lemon juice. If you put it with carbonated water, the carbonation that they use for water is different to other fizzy drinks. So they use nitric oxide for fizzy water, which is very good for you. It handles your arteries and all kinds of things. It does dissipate very quickly in the body, but it's very good for you. So if you mix it with what we call in South Africa sparkling water, it becomes almost like a cool drink. It becomes quite palatable and tastes like an apple juice drink,
Okay. All right, we're coming to the top of the hour here, guys. Hopefully you've gotten a ton of value. When I heard Nick speak for the first time, it was just it was very in depth. It's just like the best of the best in understanding nutrition. Not just, I know people that are their bodies are jacked and they're physically fit, but their insides are not. And I think that's a big misconception too. It's one thing to get your body looking a certain way. It doesn't mean you're necessarily healthy. So the reason why I wanted to bring Nick on, and some of you have been exposed to Brad, who's very much in the physical fitness side of things. But I think Nick is at a whole new level, or a deeper level of nutrition. So some of you guys put that you wanted to get with Nick. We're going to put something together with Nick, especially for the elite. We'll get back to you guys on that. Does anybody have any last minute questions? We had about 3 minutes left before we wrap up. Ara?
Nick, thank you very much. Incredible. You said full electrolytes. How much electrolytes would you put in per liter?
How much lemon juice did you say? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, electrolytes. How much?
Electrolytes.
Yeah.
Oh. So, I mean, if I would go with, like, if you take a teaspoon that you stir your coffee with, you know, I'm not talking about a measured teaspoon that you do baking with. I'm talking about so we're going to try and keep it simple. So you take a teaspoon that you stir your coffee with, and you take a quarter of that. That should be about 500 milligrams of potassium or of your salt. So what you should do is you should put a quarter of a teaspoon of salt in there, like pink salt, and make sure you get the good stuff. Don't buy the cheapest one on the shelf. Get the good stuff. And take a half a teaspoon of potassium citrate powder and put that in your water. And it really doesn't taste bad at all. It tastes a lot better than it sounds. I mean, that's all I use. Like I mentioned, I was a cyclist. So in my bottle, I put half a teaspoon of magnesium. I put half a teaspoon of potassium, and I put a quarter of a teaspoon of pink salt in my bottle when I ride my bike. So that's what I run on, basically. You got to understand what electrolytes are. They electro. So they are the electronic spark plugs that spark off energy in the body. So when you're low on them, you get low on energy. You're not using the energy in your body. So electrolytes are important.
Amazing. Did you guys get good value out of this? We wanted to start the year off in a good way with health, and obviously business is important, but if your health is not going in the right direction, what's the point? So this is a good example of different types of things we're going to bring to you throughout the year. So I got amazing value. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And again, guys, we're going to put something special together if you want to work with Nick and dig a little deeper. But hopefully you get enough today here too to make some quick changes and just really focus on longevity and health. Everybody here has big legacy goals and give back goals, and you want to live for a long time, and this is part of it. So thank you so much, Nick. God bless everybody in the new year. Hopefully, like I said, you get some really good value out of this as we kick off the new year together, and just really looking forward to an amazing 2024 together. So until next time, be well. God bless. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Bye, amigos.
Take care.
Bye.